Hey everybody, I'm Benji.
And I'm Donnell.
And it's time to get wild
In the Palm Beaches.
Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Hey everybody, I'm Benji Studt with Palm Beach County's Environmental Resources Management. Welcome to Wild Palm Beaches. We're out here at Pine Glades Natural Area, and I am really stoked because today I'm out here with Donnell McCant. Donnell, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. I mean, we're in the swamp, right?
Can't get any better than that.
That's right, that's right. So Pine Glades Natural Area, we call this the epic sunset mecca of the Palm Beaches. Hopefully we're gonna see why we call it that. But Donnell, you're one of these kind of pillars of the community that actually has a business that engages people with nature, right?
Correct, yes. My business is Donnell McCant Outdoors LLC, and I exist to reconnect people to nature, to get us out of being so drained with technology and just so caught up in the everyday struggles of society, and to reconnect us to nature so we can all heal.
That's amazing. So we're gonna do some healing out here today. We're gonna do some exploring. We've already seen some tree swallows coming around.
Yeah.
We got rained on a little bit, but you know, this is Florida, right? And this is the beauty of being outdoors, is weather changes like that, and all these clouds are hopefully gonna show us why this is a sunset mecca, right?
Right. I don't expect anything less than that.
You ready to go explore?
I'm ready, man. How
Let's
about you?
check it out. So this is really the beauty of Florida, Donnell, because, you know, I had somebody ask me on one of my photo tours, are you inspired by landscapes in Florida? And they said they weren't because there were no mountains. But our mountains are the clouds, our mountains are the weather, right?
Exactly.
And like right here, it was drizzling on us 5 minutes ago, and now we've got this stunning rainbow with these tree swallows coming over the swamp and drinking.
And if you look closely enough, you'll see a double rainbow just above the visible rainbow.
This is why we come out. Right, it's for these moments.
Right, and I mean, that just adds to the ocular blessing that you get. The sight is just incredible.
And you never know when it's gonna happen, right?
Exactly, you can't time it, you can't predict it, but when you're here at the right place at the right time, it's a blessing.
That's what keeps me coming back. So this right here is my favorite kind of paddling in Florida. You know, a lot of people like the rivers and the open water, but paddling through these swamps and these marshes, I mean, for me, what it always brings me back to is the way that we're moving through the landscape is the way that people have moved through this landscape for thousands of years, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of brings you back to slowing down and thinking about that history. And for me, it's also about understanding that, you know, nature is not separate, right?
Exactly.
That we are part of and we have been part of. So,
I mean,
yeah.
Given that our bodies are made up of so much percentage of water, I think it's 70%, 75 or something like that. And on top of that, just water in and of itself causes you to live in a flow.
Yeah.
You know, water just flows, it just is. And being able to flow with life, I mean, the lesson in that by itself is incredible.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that's it, man. Water is life. Without where we are, none of this is possible, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. So Donnell, like what we're walking through here, we hopped out of the board and the kayak, and this is really the magic of Pine Glades, is all of this restoration that was done. And so like where we're standing right here, you know, 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to see 3 to 5 feet in front of you because this was all historic agriculture back in the 50s. And so, you know, what we did here was we looked at the historic aerials and we chose places to recreate this deeper marsh that we were paddling through in those deeper areas from the 40s and the 30s before all the canals were installed. And then right here, you know, this was historic prairie. And so all we had to do was take the exotics off, level the ground out, and then be really aggressive with exotic control, and then introduce fire. And we've got to do that. I mean, you look around this area and it's wide open. It's this wide open prairie. And the reason that we can maintain that, all of this herbaceous veg, the grasses and the wildflowers, is because for millennia, all of these plants are used to burning. So many plants in Florida actually depend on fire to even go to seed. And a lot of plants utilize the heat from fire to allow seeds to germinate. And so it's this natural regenerative process. And Pine Glades is one of these areas that is such a cool example of that.
These are places that you don't find in every spot around the U.S. They're specific to you.
Yes, yes, it makes us unique.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little more about your backstory, but let's get paddling again. We'll find another spot and we'll learn a little more about you and what drew you to create Donnell McCann Outdoors.
All right, great, let's get paddling.
All right.
This kind of stuff I do anyway, man, like on my own, so this is fine. Not when it's cold, but yes, I do.
You know, we were talking about how you just kind of started your love affair with birding, right?
Right, right.
And so what was that little introduction? Because you were like, I'm not so sure, right?
Right. So my oldest son, one day he was saying that he wanted to get into birding. He wanted to bird watch. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, just birds. I'm just looking at birds. And a friend of ours convinced me to go with him, and I fell in love with it. I started, having favorite birds, the cardinal, the blue jay, and recently I saw the eastern meadowlark for the first time, and I heard the call of the eastern meadowlark, and it literally imitates a jazz riff that I've heard from Charlie Parker. And his album, one of his albums that he put out is called Ornithology. Yeah. And he literally would go out with a friend of his and sit out in nature and listen to the bird calls, and listen to the calls, and would imitate them on his saxophone. And if you actually pick up that album, if you're an avid birder and you know the calls, you would actually hear some of the riffs. I see how it ties in music, nature, hiking, birding, all of these things tie in because there's a certain rhythm to life, and we get a lot of our rhythm from these creatures. A lot of these creatures, we vibrate off of one another, and all of life deals with vibration, sound, rhythm.
We're sitting right here and the golden light is coming through it at the Sunset Mecca. Yeah. And we've got this wading bird roost behind us. We've got hundreds of birds for this conversation, which is a pretty cool backdrop.
Very cool backdrop.
And so now you've got this enormous connection with nature that you've realized and that, you're helping other people to realize through, your business. But did you always have that? Like, tell me about where did that connection come from?
Well, I feel like I've always been connected, but not to the degree that I am now. I started off as a little kid fishing a lot with my dad, with my uncles. And when I was about, let's say, 10 years old, a buddy of mine, I went with him on a church group trip, on a camping trip down in the Keys, and I fell in love, and I would get my dad, I would beg him, Dad, please, I want to go camping, I want to go camping. He's like, I'm not doing that. It's not what we do. And by what I mean by we, black people don't typically do things like that. Right. There are enough of us doing it now, but at that time, no, it was unheard of. And so I knew that if I was gonna have to do something like this, it was gonna be me doing it. So when I became an adult, I would, frequent little trails here and there, but not venture too far out. Yeah. And, just to try to stay safe, because that's not something that, my people are used to. Yeah. However, got a job in 2013 that forced me to travel everywhere, rural areas that there are not many people. I'd have to work out in these areas in the outdoors. Sometimes it's snowing, other times it's pitch black at night and there are coyotes all around. Yeah. And it was terrifying. I noticed that when I got out of that position at that old job, where I hated being outdoors, I really hated being vulnerable like that, I found myself coming back into more of a city life and realizing that I found my most comfort, my most solace, the most growth out in nature. Yeah. And so I started voluntarily going back out. And so then in 2020, when things were impacted on a global scale, for all of us, people were, sick, people were scared, people were wondering what was gonna happen next. I knew what was gonna happen next for me. I didn't like to feel restricted or constricted or feel confined to one space. I knew that if I was coming back out into nature, the world was my oyster. It was huge. It was just a vast place where any direction I walk, 360 degrees, there's opportunities for learning and growth and spiritual growth. And so I decided to start venturing out with just my family. But then after that, something clicked where I said, man, if this is healing for us, why can't I bring this to other people? People are generally around the world disconnected from nature. Yeah. And like you mentioned a few minutes ago, nature is a reintroduction into who you are. Yeah. You can't help but see yourself here because you as a person are natural. Yep. And so you have to be able to take a real look at, who Benji really is, who Donnell really is. Yeah. You see all your triumphs, you see all your tragedies, you see your shortcomings, you see your victories, and you're able to hold all of those things together in balance, just as nature is held together in balance. And one thing that I feel has been missing from my people is a level of balance, because we tend to get fed, whether that's through media or whether that's through just the environments we're in, one way of thinking, one track of thinking, and that's survival. But when you're out here, of course, nature, it does entail some sort of element of survival, but everything out here is just thriving. Yeah. And if we can get out of a survival mentality into a mentality of thriving, then a lot of issues that we face just kind of seem to fall by the wayside. And so I'm wanting to create that for us. And what better way than to go into an environment that you feel is dangerous, but it's actually safe for you.
So Donnell, why is it so impactful for you then to be able to be the one that breaks down some of those fear barriers for folks that, look like you and have your life experience in the work that you do?
It's important for me because I am that person who needed that barrier broken down. I remember just having so many thoughts racing at so many different times in my mind about how I'm going to provide for my family. How am I going to be able to, manage day to day, with all sorts of different things. Am I a good dad? Am I, doing the right things for my sons? And all of these thoughts get calmed down and they get dissipated when you come out into nature. Again, it's a reintroduction to who you really are. Yeah. And I didn't have to wonder and scramble in my mind to wonder, am I a good dad? No, I am that. The question now is, how do I walk in it? Yeah. And the way I figured out how to walk in it is to just continue coming here, because this is just an ecosystem of balance. And when things are held in balance, there is no stepping over boundaries. There is no overthinking. All of these birds that we're here in the backdrop watching, and all of these gallons and gallons of water and these plants or whatever, they're just here coexisting. Yeah. And you can't coexist with other people until you can coexist with every part of yourself. Yeah. You have to have that. You have to have a balance of tension between what's right with you, what's wrong with you, and learn how to actually accept those things and move forward in a positive direction. And this is what coming out of nature has done for me, and I want to actually bring that to my people.
Well, I tell you what, the birds are cooperating, the sun is finally cooperating.
Yes, finally.
Even though we're getting a few raindrops.
Right.
But let's just hang out and enjoy the rest of this day.
I agree, let's do it. Did they just join those and say, okay, we're gonna go with you?
Yep.